Boom. All right, gang, here we are. This is episode 7 of The Soapbox with Austin Malleola. Welcome back. Got some really cool feedback on the last one where we talked about steroids, performance-enhancing drugs, coffee, and some coaching stuff. I want to switch gears a little bit on this one, and one of my good friends, a coach that is a fellow seminar staff coach. She's coached for me at Reebok CrossFit One as well as CrossFit One Nation. Megan Burns hit me up and was like, hey, you got to do a podcast on your reading list. So I was like, all right, cool. And it made me, comb through my reading list, kind of add to my list that I got here. So I'll kind of keep it short and sweet, but give, my 2 cents on each book, what I liked, what I didn't like, and, hopefully find some value out of it. But I know for me personally, I always go to others and trusted sources to find the next book. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a brand new book, just something that is recommended by someone that I trust. And I have a few challenges to myself. So let me preface how I read, what I do, and my purposes behind it. So I listen to books. I actually don't read as much as most people probably would like. So I commute to Reebok, which is in the Seaport, every day. So I listen to an audiobook on the way there and the way back, and that's really my only time that I actually read. So in the morning, if I open, it's about 35 to 40 minutes. On the way back, it's usually closer to an hour. So that's about how much content I consume, give or take a couple phone calls here or there. And I also rewind and whatnot. And then I kind of go, I have different categories of books. So I have books that really interest me a lot, and books like that are self-help books, I guess, for lack of a way to put it, leadership, management, economics, really just learning. I love to learn new things, and I love to expand my horizon. So I love that type of book, whether, and I'll kind of, and you'll notice that's obviously most of what I listen to. And then about a year ago, I challenged myself to also move outside of that scope a little bit. So one style of book beyond that would be what I call a challenger book. A challenger book is a book that is something I'm not comfortable reading, something that I at first glance I'm like, I don't want to listen to this or read this. And I'll talk about one, which is The Language of God. And that's something that was super challenging. Just the title of the book, I wasn't into it. It turned me off. But I listened to it and I was really, really happy that I did. So I call it a challenger book. And then a fiction book, a story. The last one that I read was To Kill a Mockingbird. And then prior to that was Watership Down, some books that I read when I was a kid growing up, but obviously when you read it when you're an adult, it's a little different. So those are the 3 categories I try to rotate through, but biographies are a huge favorite of mine, and then obviously that sort of education, inspiration, and sort of expansion of my horizons is my favorite type of book, that self-help book. So that's sort of what it looks like for me. In places that I go to get my books, I'm on a few newsletters in the morning. I get the Morning Brew, which is like an economic, sort of breakdown, which I really like, and they usually have some good references from time to time there. The Daily Nut, which is sort of like a socioeconomic, political type of thing, which is cool to read a different viewpoint. And then I just try to, kind of pick, and if I see something like a reading list on Twitter or something like that, I'll pick it up. So that's what that's where I get my inspiration from. And so let's dive into it. Let's kind of go through my reading list, and so as I look through here, some of these date back a really long time. Value by McKinsey and Company. So just to Do the Work on a Bridge by Steven Pressfield. You guys have probably heard about that. One of my favorite books that kind of led me into a rabbit hole of economics was The Big Short. You guys are probably familiar with that, with the movie. A similar author, Flash Boys. It's about Wall Street. Rich Dad Poor Dad was recommended to me. I was reluctant because I judged the book by its cover, and I was really happy with that. It was a cool book, some really simple lessons, but cool. One of those cool things. The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, another one of my favorites. Overcoming the 5 Dysfunctions of a Team is the follow-up book. I haven't read that yet, but it's on my list. The Advantage: Why Organizational Health Trumps Everything Else in Business, by Patrick Lencioni. These are some names that you'll probably recognize if from a business perspective. Death by Meeting: A Leadership Fable. This one was pretty cool. It was like essentially they just talked about, it was like a story about how meetings in the corporate culture are toxic. It was really unique. Obviously I don't want to give you a summary of everything, but that was cool. Watership Down's on there. What else? The E-Myth, Mastery and E-Myth Revisited by Gerber. The Magic of Thinking Big by Schwartz. I have this on my list. It's one of my next ones I want to listen to is Reducing Emotional and Material Baggage by Thoreau. That's what I would call a challenger book, probably why it's not checked off on my list right now. Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek. That was a good one. Simple, really cool concept. Black Box Thinking. Really, really cool book. I recommend this for everyone. I know essentially for those of you that are relatively aware of CrossFit methodology, there's a lot of synergies there. So Black Box Thinking, that's a cool one. What else do we have? The School of Greatness by Lewis Howes. That's a cool one. You'll hear some familiar names in there. Just some cool lessons, like a good summary. Similar to some of what Tim Ferriss's work, like Tools of Titans, which is on my list. That's a good one in there. It's not super robust, but it's a good conglomerate of information there. With the 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss, that's a staple that's on my list as well. I like that one. Definitely recommend it. I wasn't a huge fan of it, quite honestly, for a few reasons, but definitely a good listen and challenge you. But the 4-Hour Work Week, a little gimmicky, but cool concepts there. Tribes by Seth Godin, a little marketing piece there that was cool. Great by Choice by Jim Collins. I definitely recommend Jim Collins, and Great by Choice was a good one out of the sort of the good to great type of books he's created. Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. You probably have heard that for you guys out there. Really just good book, really good listen, because him and Leaf, they speak it, so it's pretty cool. I definitely recommend that one. Teams of Teams, another good one there. Naked Money, this was a good one. I got into this kick about just economics, and it's sort of like a big kick I'm on now personally, but like it taught me about the history of money. Super cool stuff if you're a nerd about that type of stuff. The Language of God, really, really recommend that one. That was a challenger book. One of my favorites, Principles of Life and Work by Ray Dalio, really, that's a one I'm going to listen to again for sure. Principles blew my mind. One of my favorite books, probably. That's a top 3 for sure. Crushing It by Gary Vaynerchuk. It's worth it. It's worth it. It gives you a cool sense of urgency for those of you out there that want to share stuff. Quite honestly, it might have been the impetus and tipping point behind, starting the vlog and some of this podcast stuff, where just start to create and be there for people. And if they like it, awesome. If not, you're true to yourself. And so some cool values there. Gary Vee can be a lot, but I liked it. Hooked, How to Create Habit Forming Products. That was a cool one. Very markety, but some cool concepts there. Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday, really good one there. Traction is sort of a management style a book, really cool stuff for those of you out there that manage teams, that deal with people. Really sometimes tough to get through, but some good information in there. Shoe Dog, that's sort of the the founder of Nike explained the history. Really, really good book. I just remember listening to this when I was training a good amount for the marathon this past year. So I really, you kind of go back to those moments, but really cool book, cool story. I know some people that were behind the scenes a little bit. It might be embellished, who knows? But regardless, fun book. Definitely recommend it. Essentialism. This was for our book club that we have at Reebok Rosso One. Giancarlo Graziani recommended it. Really did not like it. It fits into the aspect of a challenger book, but definitely some really good takeaways. But I definitely think I had some bones to pick with that one. To Kill a Mockingbird. Never Split the Difference. This was one, it's about negotiating. Super cool book. This is probably one of my top 5 as well. So it's essentially about negotiating, and this is like when FBI, hostage negotiator, and he essentially talks about and walks us through his journey, what he did, and his skills, and his company now is sort of he teaches people how to negotiate. So I definitely recommend that. Really cool. That's a re-listen for me pretty soon. What else? Oh, so some just books that were, Baby Wise, The Expectant Father. So for any of you who's out there, I think both are really good books. I listened to them both actually twice. Can't hurt, but make sure that you form your own opinions out there, certainly from that perspective. And then The Culture Code. Quite honestly, I don't remember too much of it, so probably wasn't too great. Can't Hurt Me by Goggins. You guys have probably read this, listened to it. I think it's a good listen. I think there's some good takeaways there for sure. It's a cool story. It's a cool story, and if that type of stuff fires you up about just sort of like grit, I mean, it's as gritty and a story of that will make you have perspective. It was cool. Crossing the Chasm, just a business book, which very difficult to get through, but very dated. I was actually somewhat comical talking about the internet and things like that. But I definitely recommend it for those of you out there that are doing some cool stuff or see brands out there and not really sure what they're doing. The Crossing the Chasm can give you some good ideas out there. What I'm into right now, I'm actually listening to 2 books. I'm listening to The Daily Stoic, so obviously that's sort of it essentially gives you a bunch of daily, Stoic references, and Ryan Holiday sort of gives you sort of someone like say Marcus Aurelius gives you a quote, explains the quote, and then gives it, ties it back to something modern day. Really cool stuff. I crank through about 4 or 5 of those a day. It's sort of, I like that style. I'll do that in the morning, and then I'm listening to Sapiens. Sort of the brief history of humankind. Really cool stuff. It's a lot. It's a little, tough at points, a little opinionated, so it's epic. Arguably the author is people say that he's like the most important intellectual of our time. So I'm cranking through that right now. What's on my list? The Inevitable, Range, Behavioral Economics, Transformational Leadership. These are a couple of books that I have in my queued up, so I don't know much about them, but that's about 50 books or so when it's all said and done. So basically, for me, hopefully a reading list is an inspiration list. Top 5 books for me that I've ever read. I liked Extreme Ownership a lot. Draw a lot of parallels. I love that concept. Ray Dalio Principles. The 5 Dysfunction of a Team left an impact on me early in my career. Never Split the Difference, like I said, is absolutely up there. Shoe Dog might actually be up there too because of how fun of a story it was. It was a really fun story to listen to, and very inspirational. And it wasn't on my list. I remember Management, I think by Peter Drucker. It was one of the drier things I've ever read in my entire life, but gosh, it taught me. It's how I kind of learned how to deal with people, because I didn't go to school for it, and I was relatively young when I had to, manage people, and then when someone told me you manage systems and lead people, that book really helped solidify some of those learnings there. And, so really what this all comes down to, and I've been toying with this idea for a long time of sort of chatting about it, but so I'm working with a writer, writing a book about my life story. So that's why life stories kind of always gravitate towards me, and I gravitate towards them. My life story is something that is, most people, if don't know too much of my past, pre-CrossFit and sort of all of this stuff, and also the lessons that I've learned and the behavioral changes that I've made and the impacts that I've made on myself and others, good and bad. So I'm working on that right now, working on getting it published. That's a little harder than one might think, and doing it the right way. So, but good thing I'm working with an awesome writer who's helping me out. It's a long process. I understand that stuff now, but listening and reading books inspires me. It makes me think and bouncing ideas off, and hopefully helps me shape the idea of what my book will look like at some point if we ever get it to come to fruition. But if you have any questions on books, let me know. But a goal that I have for everyone out there is, look back, like, some of these books I read were super old, some are brand new, but, it's finding time to be productive, and for me, it's in the car on the way to and from. That's a useful time for me to learn, and when I'm home, I don't have time to read, and I'm not a read before type of bad guy, so that's something that I really cherish. So hopefully you found some value in this episode. We're closing in about 17 minutes. I think that's all we need. That's I believe this is episode 7, and this is my reading list. We'll chat with you next week.